Here's our first example for reading a dial caliper measurement. So along the straight scale here, you have your inches, and these inches have been broken into tenths of an inch, not your typical sixteenths. So you notice that right here is a 1 inch, and that's 1 1/10, 1 2/10. So it works with our decimals, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5, 0.6, 0.7, 0.8, 0.9, and a whole 10 tenths takes you to the next whole inch, 2 inches. So we can read along this scale how far the dial caliper has opened to the nearest tenth of an inch. Then we'll move to the dial. So this first one, I can read that it's past 2 inches, it's 2, and it's actually not to the 4/10 yet. It is to the 3/10. You might go back and note that when we set the scale to 0, this was, the 0 mark was clearly in view, and there was actually even a little bit of space between that. So right here, we have not fully revealed the 4/10 of an inch. So this is at 2.3 and some more. That some more we'll figure out from the dial. So first I'm going to record that I have 2 whole inches, 3/10. Our next two place values are hundredths and thousandths. The dial caliper is going to allow us to read to the nearest thousandth with certainty. So flipping back, this dial, you'll notice, goes from 0 all the way up to 100. 100's back at the top at 0. That's 90, 95, 100. This is in thousandths of an inch. We've already recorded our whole inch and our tenths. Now we're going to read how many thousandths. So if I zoom in, that's 70. This longer line is 75, 76, 77. I'm not quite to 78, so I am at 77. So 2.3 and 77 thousandths. Next, I'm going to estimate one more value. We're going to go back and look at that dial caliper zoomed in. And I'm going to imagine that this is broken into tenths from 77 to 78. And I'm going to estimate how many tenths it would be from the 77 to the 78. Now, halfway would be a 5. And I look like I'm more than halfway. So I want something bigger than 5. And this, again, is an estimation. I'm probably going to call it a 7. So I'll say that it is 7/10 of the way from 77 to 78. And there's my reading out 4 decimal places, 2.3777. So that's example 1. I've got one more to do with you quick. Let's look at the second example. Okay, this one, notice on the scale where I can read to the nearest tenth, I have a whole inch, and then I have 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, 1.5, and a little bit more. Looking at this dial caliper, I can see that it's just past the 0, so I know that I just went past a mark, so it's the 1.5 I just went past. So I'm 1.5 and a little bit. So let's look at the little bit here after I record this. At this point, I know I have 1.5 inches. Now we're going to get down to the nearest thousandth. Now this scale is reading off really a 2-digit value to the nearest thousandth. So when I zoom in here and I look at it, 1, 2, 3, not quite to 4, so I'm going to go back to the last whole value I went past, the 3. When I record this in writing, I'm recording 3 thousandths, not 300ths. So I can't put a 3 here. If I put a 3 here, that would be 30 or 30 thousandths. What I have is 3 thousandths. So on those values where you're less than 10, you have to be really careful to remember to put a 0 in here. When you're reading the thousandths, make sure you put a 2-digit value. So it's 3 thousandths, 0.3. Now I'll go back. In between the 3 and the 4, we're going to estimate how many tenths I would have been to go from the 3 to the 4. So here's the 3. The needle is not quite on the 4, but they overlap. They're touching. So that's almost there. So let's approximate that that's 9 tenths of the way to the 4. So my last value will be a 9. So my final reading is 1.5039. And looking at the dial caliper one last time, we got that from right here, the 1 inch, 5 tenths, so 1.5. Now reading off the next two values here as a 2-digit, this is 3, so 0.3 to write 3 thousandths. And then I estimated between the 3 and the 4 to be 9 tenths of the way there. So 1.5 and 3 thousandths, 0.3, and an estimation of 9.